Hello once again and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host Prince Magnum. Welcome once again to Do-It-Yourself Budget Hot Rodding and the mini-series known as The Icon, The Legend, The Record. If you've kept up with the channel, you know what this series is all about. This little mini-series is about, if you will, recapturing lightning in a bottle, breaking a record that I set back in 2005, the last time I made the attempt, at 55 miles an hour from one end to the other of a straight stretch that could be potentially dangerous. We'll talk more as the video progresses why I'm doing this, but in order to make this run, I have to trust in Project Spirit, and we're going to talk about the things that it's going to take to make her tip-top. That way, she can make this run with no problems whatsoever. It should be no surprise that Project Spirit shares a lot in common with cars like the Ford Falcon, the Ford Mustang, and the Mercury Cougar of the 1960s. As a matter of fact, if you set the frames side by side, you'll see a lot in common with those vehicles. But Project Spirit has went through a lot of changes since that time, so she's more Mustang than Falcon by today's standards. How much Mustang are we talking in Project Spirit? Well, ironically enough, so much so, she's more Mustang today than a modern Mustang. That being said, Project Spirit still has her original inline 6, which has some great advantages over your V8 designs. For example, the up and down motion of her pistons inside of her cylinders is great for working with gravity. The up and down motion working with gravity, lower friction, meaning that if you know your stuff and you can build on a platform like that, inline sixes put down a tremendous amount of torque, and torque is what you need when you're getting off the line. Along with that, Project Spirit still rocks an original 3-speed manual out of a 1967 Ford Mustang that had a 206 bolted to it. Now, the 3-speed doesn't really sound like it's got a whole lot in its favor, except that back in the old days, when you were drag racing, a lot of guys preferred the 3-speed manuals as opposed to the 4-speeds because it was one less gear to fiddle with. So, she has that in her favor. So I only have 3 gears to worry about, so getting through those gears, putting down the serious hate, and getting to the end of the track, or in this case, the end of the road, should be no problem for Project Spirit, considering that her simple design, slightly lighter engine, and the amazing torque that an inline 6 can put down will just be a major benefit to her. Now, along with that, the platform still requires that she be able to stop. Well, she's got the new Mustang front disc brakes, and the setup in there, again, is very similar to the Mustang from back in the day. Another major advantage that she has in her favor is the fact that Ford back in the day used to make the best rear ends that you could possibly find. I mean, if you wanted the best rear end from any car company from back in the day, you went Ford on that. That's why today most guys still run on the drag strip the 9-inch Ford rear end. Well, Project Spirit doesn't necessarily have a 9-inch Ford rear end, but she does have an 8-inch Ford rear end, which is still not that bad. So, that being said, the only disadvantage that she has there is a single track rear end. So, Project Spirit has the goods to lay down serious hate, so getting from one end of the track to the other should be no problem whatsoever, and breaking that speed, that speed record and setting the record even higher from one end to the other at 60 miles an hour. So, let's go ahead and break away and we'll get to the next part. Now that we've talked about the advantages of having the platform that we do in Project Spirit, it should be noted that Project Spirit is definitely not a restored car. She's what we would refer to as a mild customized car. Very typical of what you would have found in the 90s. Basically, what you had is what you got, but you just kind of made improvements around what you got, which was, again, something very commonplace in the late 90s in the hot rod genre that I was involved in. That being said, Project Spirit has went through those changes just as I would have done back in the day. The Hurst shifter on the floor, she's no longer a 3 on the tree. Her shifter is on the floor with a Hurst shifter, a type that Hurst no longer even makes. Along with that, she does have a performance exhaust muffler. She does have the improved ignition coil from Excel, the Excel Super Coil. Her air filter has been opened up so it draws more air. Things like this will equate to a little bit more performance than what you would have gotten from Project Spirit, say back when she was brand new in 1974. Because if you look at the build date, she was built in November of 1974 and listed as a 1975. That also being said, Project Spirit also has the front disc brakes that you would have found on the 70 to 73 Mustang or Mercury Cougar, which was designed to stop the amazingly powerful 429 Cobra jet. Well, I say stop it, but stop it as best as it could back in those days, because that 429 would still overpower those brakes. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that in this case with a 1975 inline 6. So, that being said, she has a great ability at stopping. Along with that, she's had several of her front suspension parts changed and improved, meaning that she handles a lot better than she used to. Along with that, she does have power steering. It barely works, but it's there. That power steering will be great when I get to the end of the track or stretch of the road and I've got that sharp corner to go around. So safety is now at the forefront as well, so Project Spirit can pretty well handle whatever you throw at her. These changes will equate to the fact that when I go to make that run and break my old record, again, as I was said in the first part, this will be no problem for Project Spirit as she sits today, except that as I'm making this video, she's going through some more changes so she can run at tip-top condition all over again. The video clip you're seeing right now is not Project Spirit. No, this is my good buddy 3rd Gen 83's 1974 Ford Maverick. One of the things that has to be said about Project Spirit when making this very potentially dangerous run is the fact that she is a 4-door car. Something that 3rd Gen 83 was kind enough to point out to me, how this will be a severe disadvantage to her. Those extra 2 doors, the extra length to her body, will give her the disadvantage because now I have to push her engine a little bit harder than before to get the same amount of performance that, say, a 2-door might get with the same setup. So, in essence, Project Spirit weighing more will actually be a serious disadvantage in getting her up to speed. So, thank you to my good buddy 3rd Gen 83. He was kind enough to point this out, and it's a factor that I have to figure in when making this run. Now, along with this disadvantage, the other factor that we have to figure in is the problem that Project Spirit was built on the economy side of this platform. The inline 250 was kind of the middle of the road, and it didn't have a whole lot in the way of performance. So in order to get that extra performance, we have to do a lot of work. Along with this, we're doing a lot of work to a lot of original parts. Shoot, the engine is still original. Technically, it's never been rebuilt. It's been taken apart. Maybe a few internal parts changed. I know the timing chain has been changed, but this creates a serious disadvantage for Project Spirit, because now we have to work around the fact that there's a lot of parts with a lot of miles, and we're talking a lot of years on that engine. So this is a serious disadvantage. And if you know anything about the performance of the 1970s, there wasn't a whole lot in the way of performance back in those days. So when you hear the number 85 horses, well, that's the net horsepower. But if you were to twist my arm and say, well, what's the gross horsepower like you would have seen in the 1960s? Well, it would probably be right around 120 horses. And the engine that set the record was pushing close to 200. So this, again, you can already see where the disadvantage is. Along with that, we're still replacing a lot of original suspension parts. These suspension parts have been on Project Spirit since the day she left the factory back in 1974. So again, this is a serious disadvantage. So for the next few months, even as I'm making this video, and the few months after, if you will, Project Spirit will be going through a series of where this part has to be changed just because it's old. It won't make this run. But the upside of this is that it'll guarantee that Project Spirit will last for a very long time, as long as we take good care of her, and provided I don't have a serious accident when making this run. So there you have it. Project Spirit does have serious disadvantages, but if we play our cards right, we should be able to work around those disadvantages. But they are disadvantages that we have to take into consideration, because if we don't, we won't succeed at our goal at breaking the record and setting it at 60 miles an hour from one end to the other. In closing, if any of you are still wondering if Project Spirit will be up for the job, I think the record speaks for itself. That brings us to the ending of this video. As always, be sure to follow me on Twitter and follow me on Facebook. Be sure to check out the Patreon account, and as usual, get out there and work on a project. I don't care what it is, just do something with yourself. Idle hands and a creative mind make horrible bedfellows. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet and do something special for them today. And as always, for all of you out there, if no one out there has told you that they love you, Prince Magnum does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.
Man. Wow, man, freaked out.